everyone, it's the 31st of May. I've finally got down to the plot, sun's out, it's a bit breezy but it's a nice day, so the weather's actually finally started to warm up. So I'm here to plant out my French climbing beans, the Cobra, and my sweetcorn, which is a Swift. Just a quick mention about the climbing French beans. They don't really like really exposed areas. I do struggle sometimes here, so I've done something a little bit different this year. I've put them into slightly bigger pots. I absolutely soaked them because when I go away from here, I'm not going to get back up for a week, so you need to make sure there's plenty of water reserves in there to tide them over till they can get some roots tapped down into the bed, because they do like water. That's imperative, so as does sweetcorn. So mulching's a good idea if you can. We warn slugs do like them. They're not too bad with sweetcorn, but I know these I can have a go at. So these were sown quite a while ago in some B&Q compost in the root trainers. They were sort of potted on, they were sort of outside exposed, so some of the first leaves, these big ones here, well, the first true leaves, got a bit of discoloration, a bit of browning and that. That's just cold and bruising really. As long as the growing tip's okay, they should start to grow okay. They tend to sort of sulk about for a little while until they get a couple of wraps round, and then I'm going to tie them in at the bottom just to help guide them, and then through the season as I come up I'll probably try and tie them in a bit. I do find that if you struggle with the French climbing beans, do runner beans, because runner beans can tolerate, you know, the being exposed a lot more, and they seem to be a bit more robust. A lot of people grow the Cobra in the polytunnels if you've got the room, but if you've got a nice sheltered spot in the back garden, they'll probably do okay, you know. But I grew a variety last year which is a bit of a hybrid between French climbing beans and the runner bean. It was called tender green. I never did it before, and I thought, oh, they're going to be stringy and chewy and stuff like that, but they're actually fine. So I'm going to do some more of them a little bit later in the season, because you can sow these right up until July. And like I say, if you struggle, there's dwarf French beans as well, which I'll be doing some of them, which only get small, you know, about 18 inches, tons of varieties, and you kind of plant them in a block. They kind of self-support to a degree. As long as they've got good sunshine, they won't get leggy and crawl all over the place. Dwarf French beans, yeah, nice little thing. If you've got a couple of foot at the end of a bed, a couple of rows, sort of 9, and plant them all like 9 inches apart. You'd probably go 6 if you wanted to, but probably 9 inches is better in all directions for the dwarf French beans. So there's loads of different beans you can sow, you know, which are sort of decided by your growing conditions in your area, really. And obviously country, because I'm here in the UK and our season's relatively short, but it is this year anyway, because we've had a cold start and it's been a bit of a terrible year so far. And I feel sorry for those who are just starting out, because it's you know, if you might have had a good time in the back garden, you know, it's not been as bad, you know, but it's been a tough start. So for those who are just starting out, it's not always like this. I've not really ever known it like this in 20 odd years to be this tough. You know, there was obviously probably the compost and stuff in the beginning, but just it took so long to warm up, and it's finally warming up now. But you've kind of lost a little bit, but you've still got, you know, a good for at least 4 or 5 months of growing time you can get away with, probably up into October, and it kind of cools down a bit too much then. But you've got stuff that'll overwinter, which you need to sow now, if anything, for the colder months. So we'll get it started. Put these in, and then sweetcorn obviously over in the little bed. I've sort of marked the bed out. I hope you can hear me okay. It's a bit windy. I can't find my little fluffy cap for my microphone, so I'll try and avoid the wind as best I can. We'll have a quick look round, as I say, 'cause I think it's probably a couple of weeks since you last had a look here. You know, some of more of the potatoes are through. So I came the other day and built this thing up here. You know, it's just basically 8-foot canes pushed in, and you cross them over. You can do the wigwam if you want, or netting, but I find it really stirs it up if you put like an inner piece at an angle brace to it. That stops it from rocking that way. It's fair, it's got to stand to its own that way, which isn't too bad. But I mean, if you didn't have this bit, it would sway, because it's really exposed out here. It'll be flapping about all over the place, and nobody likes an erection that's flapping around all over the place. So keep it, you know, get it sturdy as you can through the season. If you notice anything else, put some more little braces in if you want. You know, you can peg it at the ends, and if you've got the room, put a guy rope out each side just to sturdy it up, because once these have really got a right good wrap around everywhere, you know, it takes a lot of wind impact, so it might be a bit sheltered. The shed will shelter it a bit. Obviously the fruit cage, obviously it's netting, but obviously it will, you know, deflect some of it, but I get a lot of strong winds which come from that direction. Obviously it's fully exposed from behind me here. There's some trees a bit further over, but it can take a wallop, you know. But the sweet corn, we'll talk about that when I put that in, but first of all I'll get the camera and we'll have a quick look round. Now, first of all we'll have a look in the fruit cage. I'm not expecting anywhere near as many blueberries as I normally get. Don't know the reason. Could be because of this compost I put on last year, cold start. It does look like there's been like a lot of blossoms that have started and been killed off by the cold, but it is what it is. And you know, I usually have a really good crop. I can usually get anywhere from like 18 to 24 pound of blueberries from these 6 bushes, but I gave them a good pruning, and what I'm happy to see is, you know, more shoots coming up from the middle. So I can take a bad year, you know, on certain things. I don't mind it, because long term it will be for the greater good. I did put my leftover brassicas in here, which slugs have had a good time with. They're not doing great, but I mean, obviously it's not unprepared ground this, so they've just been sort of shoved in, because underneath here it's just field soil, and it's pretty compacted. So I just sort of raked the top back and dug a couple of little holes and popped them in. And because it's a fruit cage, I thought I'll see how they go, because I'm probably going to put my Brussels sprouts in here, maybe. Because when I came down the other day, I was having a look at different planning options. So we'll talk about that at the end of the video if you're still watching then. So the raspberries, there's like 3 that are kind of growing, so they're just struggling here. So I think the raspberries are a no-go at this place here, up here anyway. Last plot I had, not a problem, but this plot, first couple of years were fine, and then it's just nothing but struggle. As with the strawberries, to be honest. So I might end up moving some these blueberry bushes sort of in a little bit, because I was going to build a bigger fruit cage, but it can stay like that. Move them across a foot, and I might put a little strawberry bed inside the fruit cage. It's kind of, everything's sort of behind there then. Like I say, this is the canes. I'll just show you a bit closely. So you've got this diagonal one, which is down here, which goes all the way up. And it's sort of just tied in at the top there, and that stops it obviously rocking, you know, that way. You know, because they're leaning towards each other, that'll steady up going front to backwards. But without, you know, if you don't put one of them in, you'll notice the difference. It'll really rock from left to right. Had a bit of a tidy up down this end. Some sweet peas I've just shoved in there. Slugs will probably ever do it then, but it is what it is. And just if they take, they take. Nothing to put in these end bits. I usually put the odd sunflower, but I'll find something to put in there at some point. Strawberries, not great at all. There's a few that are sort of surviving, so if they put out a runner, I might plant the runners actually directly in the soil, and I can dig them up and just give them a chance to grow, because in pots you can't really nurture them here too much, because you're miles away from here, so you can't keep them watered and pampered to get them, you know, like a nice good baby plant. Spuds, bit more appearance on the top now. I gave him a bit of a raking up the other day, try and get him sort of a bit more in the mound, because we're poking out all over the place. So the Duke of York's still a bit slow. They're the first earlies. I mean, ideally I've got to work out the dates when I put these in. I think, I can't remember, it was something like the 15th of April, so you've got to kind of work out sort of 10 weeks, 10, 12 weeks, and they're ready. Then you've got obviously probably maybe 13, 14 weeks for the Jazzies. Charlotte's probably the same, 14, and the Maris Pears, they'll be about 14. And obviously at the end there, I think I've got some Orla and South Palmyra. I think the Orla are down the back end, I can't remember now. They're obviously going to be in long time, till blight finishes them off basically. But, you know, usually August I kind of get to, and I've got to get them out then. Peas, I've managed to tie them back, they're starting to pick up now. I've not sown any more yet, because I'm going to wait until they start to pod. You know, because once they start podding, you get probably 3 or 4 weeks of podding at least. So and then I'll sow some more, and I'll do another run of peas. Might get, just depends on this year, you might get mildew. Cauliflowers, it's just tickling along, still small. There's one here, it's just a no-go. It's trying, but it's not going to come to anything, because the old leather jacket's obviously been later coming up this year because of the cold. So there's been a few problems where they've gnawed at some of the stems a little bit, but just see how they go. Broccoli's tickling over, no heads forming yet. I'm putting a bit of size on plants, so a couple more weeks and they should, get a nice warm weathers here. They should really start to go for it. And obviously, if it's nice and dry, slugs will leave them alone. I mean, I do need to go on there and pick some of the bottom foliage off that's low down, because that's somewhere for slugs to hide. Garlic is doing okay. It's a bit yellow, but that's just obviously cold exposure and just wind erosion. But the tops are okay. Nothing going to seed or anything like that. Spring onions at the bottom there. There's a row of them. I think they're guardsmen. I can start taking them, to be honest. And actually, the beetroot started to pick up at the back. Now this bed, it's a different story. The onions, they're looking okay, but I know those of you who were watching last year, I had some sort of issue with they were suddenly dying just here and there. And it is like a damping off, really. And there's I've pulled a couple out today, so I'm half expecting some of them will just suddenly rot off. And it's not mildew or white rot. It's just something that's affecting. So I might have to, obviously the beds are quite compacted now, to be honest, and they've dropped a lot. And if it is like a damping off thing, it's a fungal thing. You're kind of stuck with it. So options, there's old myths about, putting milk in your bed because it's an antifungal thing and the proteins will help feed healthy bacteria. So it's options, but I think I'll just do the conventional, pack it up with straw at the top and then kind of begin the no-dig thing. And because they need some straw in them, and straw will obviously help the mycelium grow, which is a good sort of fungus. So we'll just have to play it by ear for onions and see what the options are, because obviously I've had problems in that bed last year had the problem, and obviously this bed, so it's soil borne. And I've looked at a few of the other plot holders and it's just here, so it must be just a soil problem. These Primo 2 cabbages are just a bit of a fail, to be honest, but I'll leave them be for now because I've nothing ready to go in. The Rigoletto, tickling along, the slugs are having to do it, one over there. The Sweetcorn, I've used these little caps that you can get for canes so you don't poke your eye out. I've had them years. People have said where they're getting from, and I got them from the old Allotment site. There was a guy there giving a load away, so I grabbed them, and they're just handy, because if I'm planting something out earlier in the season, I can pre-mark when my sweetcorn's going to go, because I used to put lettuce and stuff like that. You can grow dwarf French beans in between if you want, but I think I've put 25 in there, so they're kind of probably 16, 18 inch that way, and then they're probably a 12 inch part that way. You can go a foot apart each way. Some seed packets say 18 inch all directions, but they do need to pollinate each other. And it does get a bit windy here, so obviously you want some calmer days for them to pollinate. Like calm evenings, come down and shake them about to get them to cross-pollinate. Last year I had a problem in that bed with sweetcorn. The back ones were okay, but some these front ones here were kind of stunted. Don't know why, because I know the neighbouring plot used to have a big manure heap and it used to puddle across here, so I don't know whether it just got a bit rich for it, I don't know. So that's the plot as it actually looks. As I said, we'll have a bit of a chat at the end of the video on possible future modifications up here, but for now we'll get on with a bit of planting, because obviously I've got my sweet corn. I brought my leftover celery, that fine somewhere here, a courgette plant I've got left over, and obviously the beans. So we'll get started with beans. There's just a few little bits of weeds in here, so I'll get them out as I go along. I'll pick a few, because this is just kind of soil from the old compost. So obviously I had strawberry plants in here, and I just put cardboard over them and all sorts of junk and that, and they'll rot down, any twigs and that, and just topped it up that way. So there's a few weeds, and because it's soil, there's going to be weed seeds in here. And with it being an allotment site, there's dandelions and all sorts all over the place, so it's inevitable that I will get weeds on my beds. Not so much with the ones that are netted, that does stop quite a few of them. Right, so I'm not going to film planting all these, same as the sweet corn, you know, I'll do a couple and then we'll have a look at them afterwards. So, say, plant it, I mean, some people plant them on the outside, I'm going to plant them on the inside, because it's just here, it's a bit close to the edge of bed, a bit drier there, so I'm thinking, they'll go there and they can pump some roots out and they'll find their own way. It's just a case of going down. Let's say it's quite tough, this bed, you know, a bit further down, so I would rather use my bulb planter for this, but I haven't got it. You can plant beans a little bit deeper if you want. Say they're soaking wet, and these, you know, they're in the root trainers, but putting these pots now for a couple of weeks, so they've had a right good soaking. A bit too much to be honest, but you shouldn't do much harm. I'm just going to sit that in like that. You can lean it a bit towards your actual cane, and when they start to climb, they will always climb in an anti-clockwise direction. So if you're getting it flapping around and you try and obviously tie it back, which we'll have a look at in a minute, tying back, because I can't find, oh, it's here, my wire. Found some of this in the shed, so I'll use some of this wire. It's probably a bit harsh on it, but it's what I've got to hand at the moment. I'm just going to simply not tie it tight, it's just there to stop a bit of the wind impact, really. Just a couple of twists. I'll just hold it, and it just stops it from, obviously, because it gets quite exposed up here and it'll flap about everywhere. You know, you can slide it down a bit if you want. Hopefully that'll gradually find its way, but I'm going to keep attaching this year, because I was coming down in previous years and you'd find like top foot of it flapping around, and it doesn't do it any good. We'll do another one. A few worms in here, so that's a good sign. These are just like 7 or 8 centimetre pots, 3-inch pots really. You know, and I'll give these a right good water in, and say I'm not going to be down here again for a bit, so they've got to fend for themselves. I think we're due actually a little bit of rain over the next couple of days, only a little bit though, which you don't mind, it just helps keep things watered in a little bit. Like I said, I mean, the soil here in these beds, they've got none of the beds are dry. They might look dry on top, but it's kind of like if you put your finger in and it's just wet underneath, so it's fine. Because I want them roots to dry, you know, deep down. One more, and then I'll get on with the rest of them. I say some of the little leaves have got like a brown. It's just bruising, and because they've potted on, they've been outside and we've had cold winds have hit them, because they've been in a sort of semi-shaded spot, to be honest, in the garden, which isn't ideal. But it's the only space I've got at the moment, and it was just to toughen them up a bit, guard them up. So now we've got the warmer weather, they should be sort of fine down here now. Like I say, it is exposed and they do struggle a bit. You know, so it's something I might have to consider somewhere down the line, of just switching to runner beans down here at the plot. It's something we do sort of eat a lot of. You know, so if you have a good year on them, it's not so bad. And like I say, all that'll do is just stop it from like completely blowing right over. If you put it too near the top, it could snap. You know, because obviously there's a flex in the lower part. You can tie the bottom bit back if you want as well. It's up to you. But it's just once they get some roots in, and once they get a couple of wraps around there, that they're off, and they get way past the top of these canes. So you definitely need like some, at least 7-foot canes at least. Right, so I'll do the rest of these, and then we shall have a look at them. Right, that's all the Cobra French climbing beans in now. They've had a water. What I also did as I went along is I pushed one single seed next to each one as well, because I've used all my plants, so I've no backup. So I thought if I put a seed in, and if should any problems, there's another chance that the other seed might germinate. Because I've had them germinate fine just sowing them direct. providing things leave them alone until they can get going. But I say I've tied them all in, so most of the tops are kind of leaning to the left of the cane, so that kind of prepares them ready to do the first round. But it's ultimately to do with the sun and the shadow, they kind of follow that round. But they will try once they get going, and it's just basically they're at the mercy of the elements now. So what will be, and they usually produce something. I say they're a bit more tricky than the actual runner beans, but I do prefer the taste of French climb beans. And dwarf French climb beans are probably my favourite to eat, because I like them really small. You don't want to be letting them get too big, and keep picking as well, because the more you pick, the more you get. And as they get to the top of the canes, take the tops off and they'll send another side shoot out somewhere. And they'll keep cropping until the frost ultimately kills them, or if you get some sort of disease or something like that. So we're going to do the sweet corn now. Okay, we'll put this sweet corn in. Variety's Swift. It's an F1 variety. There's loads of different varieties, but the idea is you're not ideally supposed to plant 2 varieties of sweet corn in close proximity. So just bearing in mind, if you're on an allotment and someone else has got some growing the other side of the fence, what they're growing. Some varieties it'll say it's fine to grow alongside other varieties, because sometimes they don't cross-pollinate well with other varieties. It can kind of cancel it out. It needs to kind of be amongst its own kind. So like I say, the space roughly a foot by maybe 16, 18 inches. I haven't got enough, I could squeeze another row in, but I haven't got enough plants, and this will be enough. They've actually dried out a little bit, these pots. But like I said, there's absolutely loads of root on them. These were sown in that cutting and sowing compost, the B&Q's own Verve. So it seems to be okay. I've had some problems with my cucumbers though. They got a bit wet. My own fault. I didn't put them under cover, and most of them have damped off. I think I've got 2 left. So I've sown some more, so we'll just see how they go. Right, it's quite simply dig your hole. Right, because you can put this a little bit deeper. And it's not really, you don't really have to worry too much about a rotation thing with sweet corn, because it's actually related to grass. You can do that 3 sisters thing where you can grow a bean next to it and squashes or something in between, which is okay, but I've had it in the past where it can get a bit too crowded. It pushes your sweet corn about a bit, because squash plants can be quite evasive. Unless you can find a nice little compact sort of courgette plant, that might be okay. Or if you want to just have a larger gap in between your corn, but let's say they need to pollinate with each other. And these are going to have absolutely loads of water put on today, these. Try and soak these through again. The roots are out the bottom of the pot. Some roots will come off. I'll try and pull them through, but I'm not bothered. There's plenty enough roots in there to get going again. The good thing is with this B&Q compost, when it's pretty well soaked, it does hold water quite well. It's actually made of just peat and sand apparently. I know everything's going peat free, but until they sort this paralid weed killer thing out, and I don't think people will be too happy about it. Right, I'll get on with the rest of these. Right, they're all planted in. So it's just a case of watering them up now. There's a couple that were, remember rightly, I had a few that didn't germinate. I think it was 5 or something that didn't germinate. So there's a couple up here that are a bit smaller. Watering cans getting blocked up at the end. It's probably had a good 40 litres on this bed. Say, because we've got like a heat wave going on, they need to have some reserves to actually keep the plant alive, as well as give it a chance to start. As it starts sensing it's drying out, it'll start to get some more roots down. Just gives it a bit of time. and that's all I can do with them. So just hope slugs and snails and birds leave them alone, because birds can shred the tops on them a little bit, but you know, obviously rabbits, because I don't cover them or anything. They're usually all right. You know, sometimes you lose the odd one, but that's the sweetcorn in for this year. That's it for this video. Beans are in, sweetcorn's in, so the plot's pretty much as much planted as I can get it now this time of year. Obviously start preparing for the next batch, and obviously harvesting hopefully isn't too far away. Next maybe 4 or 5 weeks things will start coming. So I've got my celery. I'm just going to have a bit of a sit down for 10 minutes, see if I'm going to put it here or put it at home somewhere in some trays. I don't know, because I've got some of these blue trays at home and I can probably get 5. I've got 10 left, so I've got enough room for 2 of them. Sort of, if you remember the back garden, I have some Swift first early potatoes, and they'll be ready in probably 4 or 5 weeks. So I could put the celery in, then put them out of the way, and then when the Swift are out of the way, I can slide them in there. Just an idea, you know, because I've got the plants, save throwing them. I've got some more sweet corn at home, which is Northern Extra Sweet, which I'll probably do at the side of the cucumber house maybe. Just slot some in there just for a bit of a backup. It never does anything great in that bed, so the sweet corn sometimes produces okay. So anyway, just have a quick chat about this change of plan. What's going to go, well, the idea. I've got to think about it, obviously, because obviously there's time and commitments and all that sort of thing, if I can actually find the time to do it. At the end of this season, because the raspberries are quite unproductive, and the beans, yeah, they do okay, but it's a big area getting wasted here, and I hate wasting space. Yeah, it's nice to have a nice seating area, but it's pretty much just mainly me that comes up here. I mean, Mrs comes up the odd occasion, but she doesn't like horseflies because she got bit by one last year, so it kind of put her off a bit. But so what I thought is get rid of these 2 beds, and I thought if I could get 2 of the big beds in, fine, but I can't, and there isn't quite enough room. So I can get 2 8-foot by 4-foot beds. This is what this hoop's here for, temporary. You know, this is the same sort of length. This is for 3 metre net, this piece of pipe. You know, it's a 3 metre piece of pipe, so it'll be a bit higher than the other ones, the actual beds, which is handy for things like Brussels sprouts. Eventually, you know, when you do a fresh bed, I wouldn't recommend putting sprouts in it as its first crop, because it's not really firm enough, because you do like firm ground. So I thought, put 2 8-foot by 4-foot beds here. You work out the growing space. These are, I think these are 10-foot by 2-foot, so there's like, what, 40 square foot out of 2 beds. I can get 2 8-foot by 9-foot beds in, but I'll probably just 4-foot by 9-foot. I don't know, but I might just go 4-foot by 8-foot. You know, which kind of ups the growing space quite a bit. You know, to like what, 64 square foot rather than 40. So I gain an extra 22 square foot. Might not sound a lot, but if you're doing square foot gardening, you know, like, because there'll be kind of new beds, I could probably risk growing onions in them, and hopefully we don't have the same problems we've been having last year and possibly this year. You know, and it's what I tend to grow in my new beds first of all, is tend to be onions, but I'll have 2 sort of virgin beds up here. It's just a case of getting the materials to fill them. I have got the bulk of the wood, I've got some timber left over. It's not the best shape, but I can knock it up. I'll probably use most of this scrap timber to just put a new edge around my potato bed, and I've still got some wood left from when I built my raised beds originally, so I just need to buy 1 more length, and I've got enough to do the 2 beds here. Asparagus bed, I've got a feeling that it's pretty much done. You know, got a few crowns that keep coming back. I might dig them up and put them actually at home somewhere. You know, or find a little area somewhere I can put them. Just maybe 5-6 crowns, and just let them spread of their own accord. There's a few of the other varieties that are you know, popping up. They'll just get mixed in with them, and because I do get some off them, but it's not ideal. They need a well manured bed, and you need to be on top of them quite a lot picking. Obviously I don't come down here that often. I might be here once every 2 weeks, once a month sometimes. Once things are in, I kind of like leave them be. There's nothing more I can do. So I might, because that's 12-foot by 3-foot, I might make that a 12-foot by 4-foot bed, which will come into the pathway a little bit, but I can, the little strawberry bed that runs along there, I can lose where the fruit cage is, lose that section, and then that little bit of path that strawberry that runs alongside the fruit cage, I could use that for growing beans in. Put some canes and lean them up to my fruit cage. It'll put a bit of shade on my blueberries, but my blueberries are kind of usually fruiting and finished before the the beans get up, so it won't be a risk of any shade, and they'll get morning because the sun goes straight over here. There's plenty of light. I say 2 beds. I'm a bit concerned about being this way because if I put a tall crop in that, is it going to shade this? But the sun passes over, and it's just, I thought it's for this area. I can get a lot more out of it, and the idea when you're paying rent for it, because this is not a cheap plot, it's 150 quid a year I pay for this plot, so I need to maximise what I can get out of it. And obviously when you start investing money into it, you've got to start thinking, is it really worth it? Of course it is, and gardening is good for you, but I thought I need to just maximise, it's like the fruits. I'll try and put as many fruits as I can. I've got 2 gooseberry bushes at home. I keep sort of meaning to plant them out. I've had them for about 8-9 years in pots. So I could bring them up and kind of do a 5-a-dice for me blueberry bushes, because they do move quite well. I moved them a few years ago and no problem. Just a big root ball, about a 2-foot root ball, and just dig it up and edge it over. But you do that when they're dormant in the winter. Well, probably about November time I'll do that and settle them in, because when I moved them originally it was like March, and they were just sort of dug the 6 of them up, and they were just sat in my potato bed for about a week, 2 weeks, so I built the fruit cage. But they actually fruited really well the year after. So I've not sulphured them this year. It's something I usually do every year. I sulphur them and then I water them with a bit of vinegar water. I've not done any of that this year, so maybe that's a factor why they're not cropping that well. But like I say, I'm not too bothered what I get off them this year. It is what it is, and I can concentrate on plans for the future, because I need to try and get this to be a bit more self-maintaining, to free up a bit of time, because it can get a bit hectic, and there's other things I need to get on with, obviously the band, and I want to get out fishing again, and the garden does swallow a lot of my time up, so you start toying with ideas about whether you should downscale, get rid of the plot. I'm thinking, I've put too much time and effort in, so if I can get it so it's as self-maintaining as possible, I can. It's doable. Obviously, I don't have to have the beds in operation 12 months a year. It gives me somewhere to cover up for a later planting. There's that option as well. I could have that big asparagus bed as a squash bed, or like a courgette bed, because courgettes do take up a lot of room. In the back garden in pots, and when they're in pots, it's the constant watering. You see, so there's all that. Here things get watered in, and they're kind of on their own. If the beds are good, they'll hold water. And most of the beds I don't really have an issue holding water. It's just over the years I've stopped putting straw on, so then I need to go back to that layer of straw. With 3 inches of straw at the end of the year, about 1 inch of compost on top, cover it over, and then winter will sort of soak up that straw, and it'll stick to the soil, and then obviously you'll get the mycelium will grow and web to it, the worms come up, and it just starts, and it aerates it, and it puts more fibre in, because each year you're not cultivating it, but if you hoe it, it starts to get finer and crumblier. Worms are casting soil from beneath, and it just starts to clump together. But it's not, if I got this soil and grew in it, it doesn't do very good at all. This soil is really not great. I've added to it loads on that potato bed, and it just doesn't come good, but raised beds, I can get away with them. They're not too bad. It takes a couple of years to get the soil working right, which I don't mind. I did it on all the other beds, and the idea will be as soon as these beans are finished, construct the beds, and anything I've got left over that's composting, instead of putting it in a heap, all that'll get thrown in the beds. I've hay in there, cardboard, kitchen scraps, anything at all I can throw in them to fill up that bulk. If I'm doing some sunflowers, only sunflower stalks can go in there. It just adds bulk, and obviously that soaks up water. And then probably some manure in the middle. I can find some well-rotted manure. But inevitably, if you struggle, you can always put some spuds in it first year, and the second year add another layer. Green manure crops, and you know, get some beans, field beans, lop them down, let them rot down on top. So like I say, that's a bit of a plan. Nothing set in stone, but it's looking like that to maximise this area, because you've got to keep maintaining paths, you know. And this is too wide. You know, I only use 2 foot. I had a little push mower that was 2 foot, and all my paths were kind of that. So I could probably reduce that to 18 inch, because the ones at home are a foot. You know, I can pretty much just put my feet sideways, and that's about a lot. But as long as I can get down, that'll do for me. Like I said, I can maximise my growing area, and it doesn't interfere with that area there, because the beds will actually go as far, probably, I'd say as far as the edge of that blue tray. So they will go a little bit more that way, but it'll give me room to get the wheelbarrow through still, work on a compost heap, and should I need to move the water butts, I can line the water butts up across this end here. I can get more water butts and link them together with a siphon hose pipe, or like I did with them, I just got some speed fit tank connectors and drill them, and you just push the 2 tanks together and they lock with a bit of pipe, and so you empty one and the others, they all find the same level, which is handy, because you can do that. You can put another water bottle in the corner and the hose pipe round, and it will all find its level. So I say hopefully it'll go down that road this year, but it just depends on time factors and other things. So we'll just play that one by ear, but that's what I'm kind of looking at getting done this year. Fence needs doing, but you know, I can kind of botch it up and patch it up here and there for now. Then I'll go with that, because I could do with like reconstructing my compost bin, because it's getting a bit old now. I mean, that was the first thing that was built here in 9-10 years ago. No, 9 years ago that was built. So things are getting there. Over there needs sorting out. The fence is knackered behind it. The rabbits have been in and that. So that's it for this video. So take care, and I'll see you in the next one, which will probably be a little while, I should imagine. I don't know what else there is to do. There'll be just updates from the garden, I think, and any harvests. Keep you posted, you know, on how the tomato plants are getting on. So thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.